You know, I always say it's a whole lot of fun beginning a new series. That's why I started 17 of them this year. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another, I guess you call it a ranking video. You know, something that I don't usually do is rank things. I get told all the time I'm gutless, you know, because I won't rank things. I always say these are not ranked. So I'm going to rank these new series that I began this year. And I think a good way to do this is to kind of also include if I am going to be continuing with them or not. Now, I gotta say up front, guys, these weren't necessarily bad. Sometimes series just don't work for you. So some things have a lower rating that I think that you would imagine that I would have. Sometimes that's because I've only read book one of like a series. You know, sometimes you can't get a real feel for how the series is going to go as a whole. So again, no disrespect is meant in any of these rankings, so I want to get that through. Also, people will be saying, where is The Expanse? Where is Realm of the Elderlings? I started both of those in 2021 and 2022, so they won't be on here. This is just new series that I began this year. Let's start it off, guys, with number 17. This is going to be the Arthurian Tales by Giles Christian. I'm still very, very much new to the historical fiction genre. It's something that it really hasn't, I don't want to say like captured me. If it doesn't like Ken Follett or Bernard Cornwell, it's very, very hard for me, it seems like, to get into it. So I want to blame that more than I'm going to blame anything that Mr. Christian did. I think he's a terrific writer, and I love anything that has to do with the Arthurian legend. But for whatever reason, Lancelot just wasn't grabbing me. It just felt like I spent too much time on that island setting everything up. And I think reading it so close to Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell that it might have actually harmed it a little bit for me, because that series was just amazing. And it was hard not to make that comparison. But I do not think I'll be continuing with that series. But again, I think maybe if you are into that genre, I think that'll be something that you might like, because he is quite a good writer. Number 16, guys, I got The Passage by Justin Cronin. This is a real shock to me, because I really thought on paper this seemed like this should have been a series I was all about, guys. I put down The Passage about halfway, kept saying I'd get back to it, and here we are into the year, and I've had no inkling to pick it back up. So it's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to continue, but yeah, quite disappointing. It started off just amazing. I loved how it started off, and then it just shifted gears, and not for the better for me. So I would say that's very much a disappointment. I would say I'm probably not going to continue with it, but I don't know if I'm ever going to pick this book up and finish it. You know, I don't DNF very often. So it's very unusual when I put a book down like this that I ever do eventually come back. There's been a few exceptions, but a lot of them, like I think last year I put Summer of Night on that. You know, I'll get back to it later. I just never did it. And it's one of those things where I think eventually you just say, yeah, probably not going to. And I probably am not going to with that one. Number 15, Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence. I know I upset a lot of people with this, because I know there are a lot of Mark Lawrence fans who view this channel. And again, it's never a thing about disrespect. Just sometimes, guys, a popular author just doesn't click with you. And there's lots of authors I like where people just say, I can't get into it, you know? And I think with Mark Lawrence, it's like, on paper, this should be an author that I love. Just for whatever reason, I just haven't been able to get into it. I've read 4 of his books now, so I feel like I've given the guy enough of a chance. It's just not working for me. And I just said, you know what? Book of the Ancestor was one that everybody told me, okay, you weren't really crazy about Broken Empire. I think this one will work better for you. Didn't. It really, really didn't. So I just went ahead and said, I finished Red Sister and just said, I don't think I'm going to continue with that one. Number 14, this one's kind of recent because I just finished it, guys. This is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And again, this is one of those where I just think, what I look for in science fiction, this just isn't it. I don't know if you would call it like the hard science part of it or what. Like, I just finished The Expanse and I loved it. Loved it. And so I went to Children of Time really, really excited. That was the one that you guys picked for me to start after I finished The Expanse. And everyone told me going into it that there are 2 different things. There's a human part, and then there's another species that'll remain unnamed here. That part, but that part's way more interesting than the human part. And as I read it, guys, I was way more interested in the human part, because the non-human part kind of felt like I was reading his biology, like his project for biology class. It's really much what it felt like. The way I put it was, it's like, say, Mr. Tchaikovsky had an ant farm, and he decided to throw some spiders in there to see what would happen. That's really felt like what he was doing, adding a little bit of fantasy kind of twist onto it. So it didn't really land for me. I'm kind of on the edge here with if I'll continue with the series or not, because I think it has some really good ideas. I just don't think the execution was great. Really liked, with the idea of how this happened on this planet and that stuff. It was just a bore to read for me. So I don't know if I'll continue with it, but I think I might, because a lot of people are saying, like, well, book 2 is a little different, because people who love and think book 1 is one of the best science fiction books ever didn't really like book 2. So we're saying maybe I might like that one better. I don't know. We will see. That one's kind of flip a coin on if I shall return to it. I do have all 3 books, so I would imagine that I would, again, just off of the reputation. I don't feel like I should be one and done with Mr. Tchaikovsky here, but I don't know if Children of Time is going to be the series for me. I guess we will find out. Number 13. 13, this is the Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. I did enjoy the first book. I didn't think that was, I guess it was kind of sold to me. Everyone was like, if you like Red Rising, man, this is going to be your series. And I got like Karate Kid in like a post-apocalyptic setting. That's kind of what I got out of it. I don't know. I guess I get what he was going for. It was just a little bit too much of a training book. And you guys know I'm not nuts about books being I like a training montage. I like a little sequence, but when it's the whole book, it's just a training book. It's not really my thing. And I was more interested in the main characters, like his sibling. And I was more interested in that story and didn't get very much of it. But from what I understand, the second book, which just came out, the re-release, these are all released already, and he's getting like nice polish on them, and Orbit is re-releasing them. That one just came out, and people have said that they think that one is kind of more of where the Red Rising comparisons do come in. So yes, I will continue with that one. Don't have a date, don't have it on the schedule yet, but I will be continuing with that series, as I will with number 12, guys. This is Songs of Chaos by Michael R. Miller. Self-pub release. I did read Ascendant this year. Liked it quite a bit. Dragon Fantasy was huge for me this year, and I've always got room for more of it. But I thought that Michael did a nice little change on what you come to expect with the whole chosen one kind of trope. Doesn't really do that. It actually kind of turned that on its head, and I felt like it was familiar, but it was different enough that it didn't just feel like, I've heard this a million times before. So I definitely liked what he was doing. I've got 3 books in that series already, and I will be continuing with this one without a doubt, because I really, really like where he was headed with it and some of the ideas he's playing around with of, hey, are you taking a noble's place right now? You dirty, dirty little cook boy from the kitchen. So I like those ideas you're always kind of playing with. Are you replacing someone who was destined to have that spot you got? And it's kind of turning prophecy and stuff on its head. That's the kind of stuff I love in fantasy, without it just being subverting your expectations just for the hell of it. Felt like it was really, really earned. So yeah, great debut. Actually, I don't think it was a debut. I called it a debut before and had someone get a little sassy with me in the comments about it, that it was not his debut. I apologize, that it's not his debut, but the debut of the Songs of Chaos, very good, and I will be continuing with that one. Number 11, The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is one that when I said I had never read it, people kind of like lost me. You didn't read it in high school? Or you didn't read it in junior high? I was like, no, it came out after I was out of junior high. Yes, I'm that old, guys. That's how I missed this one. So The Giver was one that, it's great. I liked the book a lot. I thought it was one of those I could see like so many things that have borrowed from this. I feel like the Will White series, Cradle, that everybody loves, I feel like it borrowed a lot of ideas from that. The Fallout game series, I feel like that's borrowed a lot of stuff from The Giver. So I really liked it a lot. The ending was like, I'm not really sure. I don't know if I'll continue with it, because I've heard that, it's just impossible to follow up a legacy like that first book has. I don't know if I'll be continuing with that. It's not one of those things where I'll be like, I would actively refuse to keep going. Just when I've got as much to read as I do, and not very many people have nice things to say about the sequels, I don't know if I'll be continuing with that. But I did love the book. It was a really, really great read, and it deserves the legacy that it has. Okay, into the top 10 here. And number 10, you might be familiar with him. He is my book 2 brother from another mother. This is the Edan Trilogy by Philip Chase. I love a lot of the ideas that Philip came up with in his book. I really, really love the use of the word day raven. We and him got together and we talked about his love for Beowulf after I read the Tolkien translation. And it was a fun conversation. I learned a lot more about Beowulf than I thought. And the fact that he got the name Dayraven from that's really, really cool idea that he really did do. But I love the way he set up this stuff. He's got some great coming-of-age stuff in there. You guys know I am a sucker for that. I will absolutely be continuing with his series very much. Guys, if you're a fan of like Tad Williams, Ken Follett, I think that you're going to find plenty of stuff to like here. You know, he's got kind of those priests that are a little naughty. Let's put it that way. So I love everything he set up in this first book. The magic system's really cool, and I'm anxious to continue. I just haven't yet because, like I said before, guys, I'm a terrible friend. He did send me books 2 and 3, and I will read them. I'll definitely be continuing with that series, but I still have only read The Way of Edan. Not a shock to anybody, guys, that Philip, you know, probably the most eloquent speaker on BookTube, and the one that I feel like I'm learning stuff whenever he speaks, that he would be a good writer. It's not surprising at all. And from what everybody has finished has told me is like each book gets better than the last one. So excited to continue and excited for the success that Philip is finding already. Number 9, I have ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕣𝕠𝕟𝕠 by David Gemmell. This is one where I think the expectations were set a little too high for me. A lot of people say this is the best fantasy book they've ever read. For me, it was like, I love Druss. I thought Druss was just an absolute blast to read. When he was on the page, man, I am having so much fun. It's like I'm hanging out with my drunk uncle who also happens to be a badass. You know, so you're getting to hear all these awesome war stories and stuff. But it did very much feel like I was dropping into like book 5 or 6 of a 15-book series or something. And I know he has gone back and wrote prequels and things now due to the popularity of Druss. And I feel like I'd be more interested in reading that stuff. So I'm always, you know, my guy Scott, Bald Booktuber, he's got me to the point where, yeah, I've got to read stuff in publication order, not timeline order. And I've come to appreciate that. Except for Narnia, I pretty much agree with him. But with this one, I liked Druss so much, I think I do want to go back and read all the stuff that they're referencing in this book. And you're like, what are they even talking about? I'd like to know more of that stuff. But if not, I'll definitely be continuing with more Gemmell, because I think he is a good enough writer. I think this book just kind of went in a direction. Legend, I'm talking about. I don't know if I mentioned it was Legend. I don't feel like it went the direction that I wanted to. It didn't focus on the characters that I wanted to focus on, because I wasn't really happy with the direction of the second half of the book. Let's put it that way. But I did like his writing style enough to see why people respect him, why people do love this book, and why the Legend of Druss has, you know, kind of prevailed all these years. I mean, where I had heard the name, you know, and I had heard about this book far before I ever planned to read it. So I'll definitely be continuing with more Gemmell. I just don't know if it'll be ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤, because I've heard that there are other series that people recommend over ℓ𝕤𝕤𝕤 to me. Number 8, guys, this is going to be Hierarchy by James Islington. I know a lot of people will be upset to see it this low on the list, because I know that was kind of the BookTube darling this year, and I did like the book. That's the first time I've ever given a positive review to a book and had so many people upset about it. I think what I said was, like, I think this is a really good first step into a new world, a lot of originality. I just said that I didn't see all the Red Rising comparisons that everybody had. Besides him, like, you know, being kind of like in a secret identity going into like a school setting, I feel like a lot of books have done that, not just Red Rising. I found more comparisons to many other series. I mean, even brought up kind of Sun Eater, you know, a series that I love a lot. I kind of brought up a little bit more comparisons to that than I did to Red Rising. But I did think it was a really, really good book. I just didn't think it was mind-blowing as everyone else did. And, you know, I talked to James Islington on the channel, and he was very, very grateful for the review that I made. So I don't know. I think just the fact that everybody has this as their book of the year, and I feel like I was just like, I liked it a lot. I just didn't adore it. Made them think I didn't like the book, but I did. And I am anxious to continue with the book. I mean, to the point where I was like, look, I think it's one of those deals where, like Heinous, where when I read book 2 and 3 and I look back, it might have the arrow pointing up big time for this book, to where I say, okay, he knew where he was going, and I really, really appreciate going back and looking at it from this direction. So again, a really, really great book. It's just, you know, wasn't as great for me as it was for everyone else. And again, it's only book 1 of a potential 3 or 5 books. So it's hard for me to kind of put it a little higher than that here. Number 7, Andrew Z. Thomas, Luther Kite by Blake Crouch. Blake Crouch continues to just be a badass for me. The guy doesn't write bad books, you know. Looking back at all of his books I've read, which is coming up on like 10 to 12 now, the only one I haven't absolutely loved is Abandon. And also Break You, which was book 3 of Andrew Z. Thomas. I feel like that might have kind of raised us up a little bit. They would have been higher up on the list if it were, I guess, lower. You know what I mean. It would have been ranked higher on this list, I think, if he'd actually kind of did things in that third book the way I wanted, because he kind of took a direction in that one where you kind of felt like it was shifting to a different character, and I was like, that isn't what I followed this with. So I felt like if it had just been the 2 books, I probably would have liked it much better than doing that third kind of novella to end the series. But, you know, Again, the worst Blake Crouch is still better than almost everything else that I read in a year. And the guy, he's awesome, man. He's awesome. I've been looking for this heir apparent to Michael Crichton for so long, you guys, and I feel like I finally have it. And I'm going to be sad when I run out of his bibliography because I'm kind of working my way backward. We'll be doing Snowbound this year. So, Blake, please write something new. I need it. I need it in my eyes. Number 6, guys. This one is going to be a surprise, I think, to some people. Arc of a Scythe by Neal Shusterman. Yes, it is a young adult series. And yes, I did really enjoy it. Now, I've only read 2 of the books. I haven't read the finale yet. But I really, really enjoyed it. That first book was one of my favorite reads this year. I read that first book in one day. I could not stop reading it. It was one of those, like, when I put it down, I just had to go pick it back up because I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I was like, wow, I'm really going to finish this book in a day. So Arc of a Scythe is really, really neat ideas. The second book changes direction a little bit, and I think that's where it might lose some people. But for me, I'm still very, very much invested in that story to see where it's going, and I will definitely be continuing with the Toll sometime next year. Number 5 is a recent entry, guys, and I'm still reading it, but this is how much I am enjoying it. I gotta say, the Matthew Corbett series by Robert McCammon. I'm reading Speaks to Nightbird right now. It's phenomenal. I'm loving every bit of it. So where I say that historical fiction doesn't really land with me, I guess it just depends on the author, because Robert McCammon's doing it here, and it's great. This guy is just... I've talked at length about how great Swan Song was, how great Boy's Life is, but you know, even the books of his I didn't really care for that much, like They Thirst and Wolf's Hour. His character writing was still just so good, and this, he's drilling that. In his books, it's like you can look at the pacing sometimes, like there's not a lot of stuff going on, but man, am I just intrigued to keep going, and this one's no different. I mean, it's a lot of just, you know, kind of like the Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, where you're kind of going around the town and kind of just talking to people trying to figure out, you know, what is going on with this big mystery of the book. But it's just done in a way that you just can't get enough of it. And I think it's just because he's just a pacing master. You know, I never feel like I'm getting bored. Very much a slow burn. But unlike some people, when they say slow burn, which they're trying to say is boring, I don't mean boring. I mean, this is very much working towards something, and I'm anxious to find out what that is. So Matthew Corbett, without a doubt, I will be continuing. Even if this first book ends up a little fizzled out compared to the first half, which I doubt, because everybody says the second half is better, I'll definitely be continuing with the Matthew Corbett series. And I'm so excited, guys, because Robert McCammon, he's just great. He really, really is great. Number 4, probably the biggest surprise. It's one of those, if you went back and showed me this list at the beginning of the year, I'd said, what? Did I get drugged? Number 4, guys, is One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. I know, I'm surprised too, because this was a series for the longest time. I was like, I don't think I'm going to read that. And it was one of those kind of things where it was just perfect timing. Some viewers sent me the first box set right before the Netflix series was coming out, and my kid was real adamant he wanted to watch it. And so he said, hey, you know, why don't you read it and I'll watch the anime and we could talk about it. And as a dad, guys, of a preteen, you know, you start to get to that point where you're struggling to find things to talk about, things to connect with. You always take advantage of those situations. And I said, yeah, definitely. And it was a great bonding experience, guys. We talk about it every day. We literally talk about One Piece every day, me and my kid. So that's like the coolest thing in the world to him right now. And I'm really enjoying it. I was very, very wrong about it. I thought it was, yes, guys, it is goofy. It is over the top, but it has some of the best backstory and character moments that I've seen in the medium. So a lot of people would want to count it, you know, because it's a manga. It's not a written word series, but I'm going to count it here because I do think it definitely falls under the fantasy umbrella. And I think it's weird to say this, that something that looks this goofy to the naked eye, you know, without actually going in depth and reading it, is it has so much depth and so much good world building and so much lore that you just can't stop thinking about. It really is that good. And I'm on volume 21 right now of, you know, over 100. So I'm not even, you know, a fifth of the way there, but I'm enjoying this ride for sure. And if it weren't for these other 3 series that were just amazing, it'd probably be, you know, probably my most pleasant surprise of the year. But I'm having a great time with One Piece, and I can't believe that. If you'd have told me that in January, I just said no way. Number 3, guys, I've talked about it a lot. There are a lot more people finally getting into this series. This is The Last War by Mike Shackle. Started We Are the Dead, and I think in February, and then March and April. I read all 3 of them, you know, in order. And it, guys, it's just. It's one of those where I say it's not like First Law, but I think fans of the First Law will love this series. He's got that way where you've got characters that are less than good people, let's put it that way. But damn if you aren't rooting for them, you know? So I feel like even the villains in that series, there's ways to look back at them and be like, you know, I can see where they don't think they're the bad guy. You know, very few authors are really, really good at that. But Mike has like this plot twist in the second book that is so good. And it took it from like, I'm really liking this to, holy shit, this is one of my favorite trilogies I've ever read. And it's one of those where I don't think it'll land with everybody, but I think if it should, if it lands with you, because I know it is something that is kind of a plot element in fantasy that some people don't like. But the way that he does it, man, it's so good, and it just completely blew my mind. It made me think, going back and reading this, I think there'll be things that I see that I didn't see the first time around. But man, some of the characters in this, their growth is just amazing. What he does with ℓ𝕤𝕤 in this series, from book 1 to the end, brilliant stuff, man. So Mike, he's a genius. I can't wait to see what grimdark series he does next. He is doing other series, but I think this is right up there, you know, with the First Law, with Red Rising for me as like my favorite like grimdark series. It really is just that good. He's found that medium for me where you just find the perfect spot of what makes it grimdark, what makes it heroic fantasy, what makes it nihilism, but just right there to where you say, yeah, I don't know if I can describe exactly what grimdark is, but this is it. This is what I like. So again, that was the first time I felt like that since Red Rising or the later Red Rising books. I know some people hear that with Red Rising, like, what? Get into the later books, guys. Get into the sequel Red Rising books. You'll see what I mean. And knowing that he is a big fan of Joe Abercrombie and Pierce Brown, it makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And I'm just happy that so many people are picking up the series, guys, because it's just so damn good. You will blow through it. It's amazing. Number 2, this was really hard between 2 and 1. Number 2, the reason that I got it here is because I've only read the first book, guys, and this is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. This is one that I planned to treat like a standalone. I was only going to read the first book. I was like, get out of here with the prequels, get out of here with that one sequel book. I just want to read Lonesome Dove because, you know, I'm not crazy about Westerns, but this is one that's been on my bucket list. Yeah, guys, it might be one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And that made me say, I need some more of this world, without a doubt. Guys, Lonesome Dove. I mean, what can you say about it? This might be the finest character study I've ever read in my life. Usually when it comes to me with stuff like top 10 books of all time, I say legacy takes time. Legacy takes time. I'm not going to do any knee-jerk reactions. I did my top 10 books of all time like a month after I finished this, and I put Lonesome Dove on it. And I did put it low because I said legacy does take time, but it's going to move up. I wouldn't be shocked if this is a top 5 book all time for me. Lonesome Dove, just amazing. It's one of those books where you're like, not a lot's really happened in the last 120 pages, and I'm having a blast. I can't get enough of it. I want to keep going. So again, I'm not really the slow burn type. I'm not really the type who's like, well, there's no plot going on in this book. But damn, if you hit it just right, like Stephen King does, like Larry McMurtry does, like Robin Hobb does, sometimes it's just exactly what you're looking for. And I think the book was just perfect timing for me. And I don't know. I don't think that there's a time in my life I could have read this book and I loved it. It was just that good. And the only reason, guys, it's not number 1 is because I've only read book 1. And I felt like the one that I have number 1 here, the reason that is number 1 is because I read the entire series that is released up to this point. But as for Lonesome Dove, yes, I will be continuing with it, by the way. I will be continuing with it with Streets of Laredo, which is booked chronologically, it's number 4, but publication order, it's number 2. So I'm going to be sticking with publication order. Again, I know I'm giving Bald Booktuber all the rub tonight. He deserves it. He deserves it. You need to come back to Booktube, Scott, by the way. Can't wait to talk to you on Throne Zone. But yeah, guys, number 1, if you've been watching the channel at all, you know that this is going to be The Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill. I feel like I've talked at length about why this series is just spectacular. It was one of those where Patrick had been telling me for, you know, a year plus, you got to read these. I know you don't read self-pub, but you got to give it a try. And I did. I had my nose turned up about self-pub. I was real ignorant about this, I will be honest, until I learned a lot of stuff that I learned from Ryan this year. After I read his first book, I had him on the channel, we talked, I learned a lot of stuff that what goes on, to lack of a better word, the fuckery that goes on behind the scenes with big name publishers. And now I'm like, I can see, after I talked to him, after I talked to Michael J. Sullivan, I can see why people go out on their own, you know? And with this, though, the series itself, guys, this is Dragon Fantasy as I imagine it could be when I was a kid, really. You know, because I loved the Dragon Fantasy. I mean, that's one of the things that brought me to this genre. It really is. And I said, I feel like this is the series that's going to scratch that Song of Ice and Fire itch that I haven't gotten for a decade plus. When I say things like that, people are like, oh, are you saying it's like A Song of Ice and Fire? No, I'm saying, much like I said with Last War and First Law, is if you like Song of Ice and Fire, I don't see any reason why you're not going to like this. Now, a lot of people go into this and they say, oh, this is too derivative of other things that I already like, because he does do a lot of hat tips in that first book to other series that he likes. And it's mainly wheelies. Wheelies get upset if anybody does anything like Wheel of Time. But, again, Wheel of Time, Book 1, was a big hat tip to Tolkien, right? So I don't see that there's any problem with Ryan doing it. But guys, when you get to Book 2, it takes off to another level. Now, I like Book 1 a lot. Book 2 was incredible. Book 3 of War and Ruin, one of the best books I've read since I started this channel. It's just that good. So this guy, he creates so many plot threads and so many characters that you think, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to keep all this straight. You are all in. Every time you're at War and Ruin, he's got like 12 or 13 different plot threads going on, and he balances them perfectly. And none of them do you ever get to and be like, I'm tired of this storyline. And you're like, oh yeah, let's see what's going on with them. Oh hell yeah, we're back over here. And you're following the map. You're doing all that stuff. So I made that really, really long why you should read on Bound the Broken this year, because this was the series I kind of felt like I'd been waiting for. I felt like there's been lots of series that I've really liked since I started doing this, but this is the first one to kind of dominate my thoughts. The first thing you think about when you wake up and the last thing you think about when you go to sleep, reading-wise, this is what I was thinking about. What's going to happen in the next Bound of the Broken book? Now, the series ain't done. But if you know Ryan, he works his ass off, and he puts out like one of these a year, guys, and they're monster books. They're huge. The guy is a writing machine. He's dedicated to his craft. So with me, I always say it's like Stormlight Archive. Brandon Sanderson writes fast, so I don't mind starting a series if it's a series I'm not worried about, they're never going to finish it. I know a lot of people have that, I can't start a series until it's done attitude. I get it, guys. I was reading Song of Ice and Fire since the year 2000, so I get it. But with this, I'm confident he's going to finish it. And I feel like after books that big, I kind of need some time to decompress a little bit. So I don't mind, a year break when it comes to some of these monster tomes. But that was definitely, without a doubt, guys, the best series that I read this year. And honestly, it wasn't really close. Like I said, Lonesome Dove, probably the best book that I read this year. But again, it was only book number 1, so I'm going to count the series that I read, 3 books and 3 novellas in, and think that makes it, puts it over the top, I think, for me. But guys, that was my 17 series that I started this year, so this video is going to be a little longer because of just how many series that I did. But I would be interested in hearing, guys, did you try any of these out? Did you like them? What were some of your favorite series that you started in 2023? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below, so hit me there, guys, and I will talk to you then.